Hi everyone, my name is Tori, this is Novel Life, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a really exciting video and I'm going to be talking about my favorite duets. So with romances, it's actually hard to find like true duets where you have two books that follows the same couple and then they have their HEA at the end of the second book. Sometimes it goes on for a trilogy, sometimes it's a whole series. So finding duets was actually hard, especially because it's a commitment to read a duet. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just love to read one book, get their HEA, and be done with it. But these are my favorite duets that I've read probably in the last couple years. And yeah, I just wanted to sit down and talk about them. So let's just go ahead and jump into my favorite duets. If you've been around for quite a bit of time, you are not going to find this first duet a surprise, and that is the Antiheroes and Love duet by Gianna Darling. This is one of my all-time favorite duets. I will always recommend this. I will reread them. I think I've reread these 4 times now, 3-4 times, you know, depending on the mood. Sometimes I read the first one, sometimes I reread the second one. But this is the Mystic Box editions. They are absolutely gorgeous, prized possession. This is my 3rd edition of these books. I have the original 2 right there, and then I have the bind up right there that I got at Book Bonanza last year. But this is a mafia romance duet. I'll hold both of them up for you because they're absolutely gorgeous. This duet follows Dante and Elena. Dante is the mafia boss of in New York, and then Elena is actually a lawyer in New York, and she is reached out to by her sister Cosima to represent Dante in a RICO case, which RICO is, I forgot what it stands for, but basically there is all types of criminal activity charges, and he's also facing murder, which is kind of the big one. So she and her team, she's one of the associate lawyers on his team, and she actually moves into his penthouse, and that's kind of how they begin their romance in When Heroes Fall. This first book definitely ends on a cliffhanger, but you kind of understand that they're together, but like with the plot, there's stuff happening. I mean, I really enjoyed this. I don't know what it was. I feel like Gianna writes with such passion and emotion that it really drags me in. You feel for Elena, you feel for Dante. I will say this is Grumpy Sunshine. Elena is the grump. Dante, who is the mafia boss, he's the sunshine. In this first book, Dante really breaks down Elena's walls. She has had a very traumatic past, and you see that. Now, a lot of people say you need to read the Enslaved duet first, which is another one of my favorites, but because I'm already talking about this, I might as well just not really talk about that one. You don't have to. That's Cosima Alexander's story, but I mean, you get the info you need in this series, so it's not like you're missing anything, but there is a past with Elena and her 2 sisters. You see that in here, and then in When Villains Rise, you kind of see the upturn of Dante and Elena's relationship, where they're going, where they're headed, kind of where things play out. I am keeping it very vague because I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to spoil anything, especially because this book is amazing. Oh my god, I love these books so much. Oh, I just keep looking on the inside. I just like cannot help myself. Oh. But this series is a great series. It says all monsters were men once on the back. This love was dark. It was night as black as my eyes, as stormy as hers. It was seeing the shadows in each other's soul and being drawn into their abyss. This is what happens when 2 villains fall in love. And I absolutely love that. That's just the back of the Mystic Box editions. I think that pretty much sums up this duet perfectly. I feel like I can talk about this duet forever, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to set those down very carefully because that is one of my most prized possessions that I own, let me just say. The next duet I have to talk about is one that I literally just read back in January, and that is Binding 13 and Keeping 13. So technically, these 2 books are thick as shit, okay? Technically, this is part of a whole series, and it follows kind of their friends and stuff like that, but she has not written past these 2 books. Now, this book, Binding 13, ends on a cliffhanger and the characters are not together. So, like, I'm counting it as a duet, as one. Whoa. As one. These are some thick books, okay? Like, these are thickest books, okay? But these 2, I think you should really read them as, like, together, because you don't get an HEA at the end of this first book. You need to read to the second book to get their HEA. Now, this is totally different than When Heroes Fall or the Antiheroes and Love duet, which is why it rivals for that. This is a, should I say YA? New adult? Young adult? I don't know what to categorize it, because while she is 16, she turns 16 in this book, and Shannon is our female character, and then you have Johnny, who is he's 17 and he turns 18, I think, in this book, at the beginning of this book. But while they are young, they act very much in college, like 18, 19, 20. Shannon goes through unspeakable things that no child, because she is technically a child, 16, she is very mature for her age because of the things she has gone through and is still going through with these books. There are definitely triggers for emotional abuse, physical abuse from her father. So much happens. But the story of Shannon and Johnny is just absolutely beautiful, and I feel like I can talk about it for a while. I just think that I can't really say anything without spoiling it, but this Binding 13 and Keeping 13, the titles come from rugby. Johnny is a rugby player. This takes place in Ireland, if I didn't say that already. Ireland, the audiobooks, they are beautifully done. The Irish accents, I think, are actually really, really good. And I physically read while I was listening to the audiobook, and I do not regret it. I think it's amazing to read it like that. I devoured these books. I want to go back and reread them already, which is how I felt with the Antiheroes and Love duet. After I finished, I wanted to go back and reread them. But binding or bind, I think it's binding or bind is a rugby term, and keeping, or I think is also a rugby term, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I really enjoyed, there was an all-encompassing found family aspect with his friends, with her family, with her friends, and I really enjoyed it, and it was such a good duet that I want to thank Nikki from Nikki and Bookland for talking about this last year, because that was on my radar, and I finally picked it up after a couple of my friends started reading it, and I do not regret it. It is a beautiful, beautiful story, and they're thick books, but I love them. I love them so much. The next one I want to talk about is one that I don't see a lot of people talk about, but I actually really enjoyed. It's the Regret Duet. I think it's the Regret Duet by Ali Martinez. So I am going to be very vague talking about this duet as well, because it's a spoiler for a lot of things. I kind of like to recommend books and vaguely talk about them if I went into them blind, if that makes sense. So all I knew was the blurb, which is kind of what I'm going to summarize for you. I know you can kind of look it up. The first book is Written with Regret, and the second book is Written with You, which is the Regret Duet. I don't know why I have a hard time saying this. Now, I will say this is an emotional roller coaster. In my review, it says, while I hated the female character because of what she did, I didn't think she could be redeemed, but then the ending, in all caps. I can't wait to dive into the next book, and I read them back to back, basically. The audio are relatively short. I feel like that technically this could be just one book, but she broke it up into a duet. When our female character is 8 years old, Caven saves her from the worst kind of evil. Basically, there is a mass shooting. I will say that. That's not technically a spoiler because it happens. You see it happen on page, but it's a trigger. I will say there's violence and mass shooting and talks about that and stuff like that. You think that it would be a fairy tale, but it's not. It doesn't always end in a happily ever after. She owed him her life. However, I owed that innocent child more, and that included ripping the heart from my chest and facing her father again. So it's kind of like a secret baby type thing too. That's being very vague. And the second book, which is Written with You, I literally can't talk about that book because it's going to spoil literally the first book, and it's going to spoil the duet. So I will say it's a very emotional book by Ali Martinez. I should say duet. I personally enjoyed it. I think a lot of people should read it. The next duet I have is actually by Jodi Ellen Malpass, and that is what is this? Oh, the Controversial Princess duet, it's called the Smoke and Mirrors duology. That's what this is called. I call it the Controversial Princess duet because it's the first book is the Controversial Princess. Second book is His True Queen. Now, this I listened to an audio and I absolutely loved it. Now, I will say this duet is not going to be everyone's favorite, but I personally enjoyed it. So in this book, we meet our main female character. She is literally the controversial princess. She is the younger princess. I think her brother's the prince, who is the first in line. And we see that she is just partying and stuff like that. And we see our main male character. He is actually a famous celebrity from the United States. She is the princess of the monarchy, so in England. And they meet at a party and she's just like, oh, you're a one night stand type person. No, he becomes obsessed with her. There is this push and pull between each other because they don't always see each other all the time because he's a celebrity, she's a princess. And of course you have the paparazzi that are following both of them that want to know everything that's going on in their lives and why are they together? And what are they doing? Is it real? What's going to happen? Obviously, I can't talk about the second book because it's going to spoil it. But, I mean, they're not super long books. The second book is a little over 400 pages. The first book is just under 400 pages. So I think for a duet or a duology, it's actually it's actually pretty good. Now, I will say there is some character depth to these books. Even though she's a princess, he's a celebrity, there is a little bit of development with the characters, which I don't know, this is another duology, like the second kind of series duology that I've read by Jodi Ellen Malpass that really like, it makes me intrigued by her writing. I love the way she writes. I think this is indie published, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, Ever After Romance. It's published by Ever After Romance. But I really enjoyed this. I would highly recommend this if you're looking for some, like, royal romances, stuff like that. The next duet I have to talk about is a fantasy romance duet, and that is the Radiance duet, which I want to say technically this is a series, but the third book follows a different couple. So it's kind of like Binding and Keeping 13, where you do get the happily ever after in this book, but this is just like the continuation of their story and what they're doing. Now, a lot of people talk about Radiance and they just read Radiance and they recommend it. That's totally fine. But in Eldahlon, we really get to see Brishan and Ildiko's kind of continuation of how they're going to rule together. And you're going to be like, well, what? That doesn't make any sense. Basically, as you can tell from the cover of this book, I'm trying to get the glare off of it. She is human. He is what they call a Kai, and it's like reverse. They like sleep during the day because sunlight, not like kills them, but like they're very sensitive. Their eyes are completely black. They don't have like pupils or stuff like that. They have really long teeth, really long nails. Their skin is kind of this bluish grayish tint. Basically, the two of them physically do not find each other appealing, which is why I think I love this story so much, is because it's not about what you see in the other person, like on the outside. It's really what's on the inside of how you can fall in love with someone. And I personally love it. Friends to Lovers. It is an arranged marriage. Her uncle, I think, marries her off to him, but he's like the second son, I think. So he's like it's not like a super important marriage, but it's just one of those things to keep the two kingdoms from fighting and from going to war, basically. Not like going to war, but just like keep them like subdued, if that makes sense. And I personally really enjoy this Friends to Lovers romance. You really get to see how they fall for each other, not based on physical appearance, but it's on the end. But in Eldahlon, you really get to see them ruling together because Brishan is a prince. You get to see her, what she's doing with the castle. And in these two books, you really get to see how she kind of adapts to the Kai way of life, if that makes sense. And I really enjoyed this. I think you should read both of them. I think the duet is amazing, and I love Brishan and Ildiko so much. But so that is my favorite duets that I have to talk about. That's only 5 of them, but they're just really good ones that I would love to recommend to you guys, and I just want to be able to put them in a video. So you can let me know what is your favorite duet in the comments down below. Leave me the red dress, the girl in the red dress emoji, because my favorite is When Heroes Fall, and she has a red dress. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that one. But thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content from me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.